That's exactly where it ranks alongside him. With 8:01 and a third, he's managed to pull ahead in the final 35 seconds. In that clip, you can see the defining moment when Giannis found himself in an intense standoff, quite literally, with Haliburton's father sitting courtside after being sent off by the Pacers. Emotions were already running high, but this clash escalated things into complete pandemonium. So what triggered this incident, and how is the league addressing it? Let's unpack everything, the showdown and what followed. During Game 5 of the first-round playoff series between the Indiana Pacers and Milwaukee Bucks, an unexpected and heated exchange unfolded. It was a dramatic face-to-face involving Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo and John Haliburton, the father of Tyrese Haliburton, one of the Pacers' key players. The Pacers secure an intense 119-118 overtime triumph, closing out their series against the Bucks with a commanding 4-1 win. The matchup was a thrilling back-and-forth battle, culminating in a stunning collapse by the Bucks, who squandered a 7-point advantage in the closing 40 seconds of overtime. The highlight of the night occurred when Tyrese Haliburton raced past Antetokounmpo to sink the game-winning layup with an astonishing 1.3 seconds left on the clock. However, this monumental moment was soon eclipsed by what transpired afterward. As the final buzzer rang and the home crowd erupted in ecstatic celebration, cameras shifted their focus to an escalating argument at center court. Antetokounmpo, who had put up an incredible triple-double performance with 30 points, 20 rebounds, and 13 assists despite the loss, was already exchanging heated words with Pacers guard Bennedict Mathurin. Officials quickly stepped in to diffuse the tension between the players, but this confrontation would only set the stage for a more controversial episode that would dominate headlines. Standing near the three-point line and visibly processing the sting of elimination, Antetokounmpo looked on as John Haliburton, a regular courtside presence, and Tyrese's father, rushed onto the floor, holding a towel emblazoned with his son's likeness. The video captures the moment when he approaches the Bucks star, towel in hand, seemingly provoking Antetokounmpo, which rapidly escalates into a heated face-to-face exchange. You don't really strike me as someone who gets into post-game altercations. It seemed like you were just near the three-point line, and then suddenly you're right in the middle of everything. What exactly unfolded on the court after the game? Not much. In the footage, the two are seen squaring off before Bucks players and security staff step in to break things up. Though the encounter was brief, it was undeniably intense, with multiple individuals needed to separate Antetokounmpo from the scene. What went down in those tense moments? As Antetokounmpo explained in his post-game remarks, at first he mistook John Haliburton for an overzealous fan, only to later realize he was Tyrese's father. However, their interaction left a lasting impression on the Bucks star, who felt disrespected during a vulnerable time. At first, I believed he was simply a fan, but then it dawned on me that he was actually Tyrese's son, whom I deeply respect. I think Tyrese is an incredible competitor, a great figure in the game, and this was his child. I apologize. Actually, it was his father. He stepped onto the court to show me his son holding a tower with his face on it, proclaiming, "This is what we do. This is what we effing do. This is what the EFF we do." To me, that felt extremely disrespectful. The raw emotion of this interaction was evident in Antetokounmpo's nearly 4-minute reflection during the post-game press conference. He opened up about the life lessons imparted by his late father Charles and his experience growing up in Greece as the child of Nigerian immigrants. For Antetokounmpo, this extended beyond just the outcome of a basketball game. It touched on the importance of dignity in both triumph and loss. "I'm only going to say this once," he remarked. "I won't go into too much detail about the game, because it doesn't really matter. What matters to me is staying humble in victory, because that's who I am. There are plenty of people who believe that winning a game gives them the right to taunt others, that it's an open invitation to be disrespectful. I don't share that view. I've won championships, and others may not have. But to me, that doesn't justify saying anything disrespectful." Antetokounmpo shifted the conversation by recounting personal stories about his father's modest demeanor at games, offering a sharp contrast to the interaction he'd just had with John Haliburton. His mother, who never missed a game, once hesitated after a championship victory, nervously asking if it was okay to come and embrace him. He added that his family was rarely seen near the court, noting how his brother, now working in media, might occasionally stop by, but being close to the game wasn't something they typically engaged in. Tokounmpo explained that this separation was intentional. He preferred to keep his family detached from the frenzy of the sport, recognizing how emotions could escalate, especially after a loss. His reflections shed light on the values rooted in his upbringing. He shared how his father, as an immigrant who had lived with the constant fear of deportation, instilled in him the importance of humility and respect. This influence made the antics of John Haliburton strike him as particularly out of place. "My dad," he recalled, "would walk into the family room and always be the most respectful person there. When you grow up with nothing and spend your entire life hustling to sell goods on the streets, constantly living in fear of the police deporting you or sending you back to your home country, you develop a strong instinct to protect your children at all costs. This kind of life shapes a mindset of humility, where you go out of your way not to offend anyone or stir up emotions that might lead to trouble, like someone reporting you or spreading something harmful about you." I still remember asking my dad, "Why are you so humble?" "Why, when we visit family, do you quietly sit in the back without uttering a word?" He'd just respond, "Don't worry about it. That's how I've always been." Although his frustration with John Haliburton's actions was evident, Antetokounmpo did show some empathy for the pride a father feels in his child's accomplishments. He recognized the emotional complexity of such situations, but emphasized the importance of maintaining a level of respect that should never be overstepped. However, only time will tell. Let's see what the perspective is in 20 years. For now, I'm just speaking about how I feel at this moment. Having someone's father involved, and I'm genuinely happy for him, his son, and the joy they share, because that's how it should be. But approaching me with disrespect and using profanity, that, in my opinion, is absolutely unacceptable. What's intriguing is that Antetokounmpo opted not to fully disclose John Haliburton's exact words, jokingly noting that where he comes from, there's an unspoken rule: snitches get stitches. This lighthearted remark was met with both laughter and admiration, as many appreciated his decision to show restraint and avoid escalating the situation, which could have brought about league fines for Haliburton. He clarified, saying, "I'm not the type to point fingers because in my neighborhood, snitches get stitches. I don't want to say something that might get him penalized or fined, but it was definitely disrespectful." Notably, Tokounmpo later shared that, despite the tension during the incident, he and Haliburton had a follow-up conversation that seemed to help smooth things over, leaving them on better terms by the end of it. Although the confrontation itself lasted only a brief moment, its repercussions continued to ripple throughout the NBA, sparking reactions from players, commentators, and fans alike. The incident swiftly became the focal point, overshadowing what had otherwise been a gripping playoff game. Instead of celebrating Tyrese Haliburton's clutch game-winning shot, all eyes were drawn to the surprising altercation involving a star player and the father of his opposing team's standout guard. The moment encapsulated the raw intensity and heightened emotions inherent in postseason basketball. For the Bucks, it was yet another bitter disappointment as they suffered their third consecutive first-round playoff elimination, deepening Giannis Antetokounmpo's frustrations. Meanwhile, for the Pacers and Haliburton family, what should have been an unequivocal triumph became clouded by controversy, bringing up debates about decorum among courtside spectators and the appropriate roles of players' families in such charged environments. As word of the clash spread far and wide, attention quickly shifted to how Tyrese Haliburton would address his father's behavior and the implications for the intensifying rivalry between the Pacers and Bucks. These Central Division rivals had now locked horns in back-to-back playoff series, with Indiana emerging victorious in both, further fueling tensions. The viral fallout. As video footage of the heated exchange between Giannis Antetokounmpo and John Haliburton surged across social media platforms, the spotlight landed squarely on Tyrese Haliburton. The young star had just sealed his team's series win with an ice-cold game winner, a crowning achievement that should have been his alone to celebrate. However, rather than basking in the moment, Tyrese found himself forced to contend with how his father's actions were beginning to overshadow his own on-court brilliance. Growing up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, less than 2 hours from Milwaukee, made the situation even more poignant for the budding guard. Interestingly, Tyrese Haliburton had no idea about the altercation that took place between his father and Antetokounmpo during the immediate post-game celebrations. It wasn't until he got back to the locker room and watched a replay of the event that he became aware of what had unfolded on the court while he was caught up in celebrating with his teammates. When reporters questioned Haliburton about the situation, he wasted no time in disassociating himself from his father's behavior. He made his stance clear, stating, "I don't believe my dad was in the right at all in that situation. It's an unfortunate incident." This honest admission of his father's mistake said a great deal about Haliburton's integrity, even in the midst of the euphoria from his game-winning shot and series victory over a former championship team. He didn't shy away from acknowledging that a line had been crossed. He firmly pointed out that his dad should have remained off the court, drawing a sharp distinction between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. "Basketball is basketball, and it needs to stay on the court," Haliburton remarked, underlining his commitment to professionalism even amid the heightened emotions of a playoff battle. His handling of the situation garnered respect from analysts and fans, as they admired his readiness to call out inappropriate actions, even when those involved his own family. Haliburton also assured that he intended to address the matter directly with both his father and Antetokounmpo to ease any unresolved tensions, stating, "I'll have a conversation with Giannis at some point about it." This approach underscored his understanding of the need to uphold respectful dynamics within the league, even amid intense competition. The young Pacers standout framed the post-game altercations as an extension of the fierce rivalry that had been building between the teams in recent seasons, but made it clear that his father's actions had overstepped the boundaries of acceptable behavior. He admitted that the series had been defined by verbal sparring and dramatic moments, highlighting the escalating tensions of the Bucks-Pacers rivalry, built over 19 encounters in the span of 18 months. Those who knew John Haliburton were somewhat taken aback by his outburst, given his reputation for a more subdued demeanor during Tyrese's stint with the Sacramento Kings. It appeared that the emotional stakes of a playoff elimination game and the sight of his son clinching victory with a game winner against a former MVP and NBA champion, in a stadium where the Pacers had gone 15-3 post-All-Star break, contributed to his unusual reaction. Aware of the seriousness of his actions, John Haliburton moved swiftly to address the fallout, issuing a public apology the following morning, Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, on X, previously known as Twitter. His remarks were direct and expressed genuine regret. "I deeply apologize to Giannis, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Pacers organization for my behavior after tonight's game. This was unacceptable, set a poor example for the sport, and for my son. I assure you, it will not happen again." The swift apology was seen as an effort to calm the situation and stem the growing criticism. It also reflected an acknowledgement that his actions had shifted attention away from his son's on-court achievements, a realization that likely compounded his remorse. As is typical with contentious events in sports, reactions from social media and the basketball community were divided. On X, some users condemned John Haliburton's behavior, calling it outrageous and unacceptable, shocked by the idea of a player's parent confronting a rival star so openly. Meanwhile, others commended Antetokounmpo for his composure and applauded Tyrese Haliburton for distancing himself from his father's conduct. The incident gained additional attention in light of the long-standing tension between the Bucks and Pacers, especially over the past few seasons. The rivalry had been building since the 2023-24 season, marked by memorable incidents, including Haliburton's imitation of Damian Lillard's iconic Dame Time gesture during a Pacers victory in the 2023 NBA Cup semifinals, and a heated dispute over a game ball after Antetokounmpo's career-high 64-point performance in December 2023. In a previous incident, Antetokounmpo had rushed toward the Pacers' locker room under the impression that they had taken the game ball from his record-breaking performance. This led to a heated exchange with Pacers staff and a confrontation with Haliburton on the court, during which Antetokounmpo reportedly shouted, "Go get the king ball." Although the ball was eventually returned, both Antetokounmpo and teammate Damian Lillard expressed skepticism over whether it was the actual game ball, further fueling the tension. Later, Haliburton took a jab on social media, sharing a meme that insinuated the Bucks were dishonest about the incident. Speaking on JJ Redick's podcast in February 2024, Haliburton sought to minimize the controversy but questioned whether the Bucks-Pacers contest could even be considered a true rivalry, citing the Bucks' championship status compared to the Pacers' struggles to find playoff success. This comment likely stoked the competitive fire between the teams. These earlier disagreements built a narrative of discord, with Antetokounmpo seemingly feeling slighted on several occasions and Haliburton stepping confidently into his role as the leader of a young Pacers squad unafraid to challenge the Eastern Conference elite. The Haliburton controversy then emerged as the latest chapter in an escalating rivalry. The 2025 playoff series itself was defined by high intensity, featuring 6 technical fouls in the opening 2 games, all resulting from double technical calls amid heated arguments. Additionally, at least 2 flagrant 1 fouls highlighted the series' increasingly physical nature. The rivalry between the two teams was clearly intense, with verbal conflicts placing players like Haliburton, Lillard, and Antetokounmpo in the spotlight. During the opening game, Damian Lillard, dressed in street clothes as he recovered from a recent blood clot issue, was hit with a technical foul from the bench after a fiery dispute with Haliburton and Pascal Siakam. Siakam was also handed a technical, underscoring the growing tension even though some of the star players weren't participating. Moving into Game 2, tempers flared with 2 instances of double technical fouls. In the first quarter, Gary Trent Jr. threw Pascal Siakam to the ground during a fight for a rebound, which led to an intense chest-to-chest standoff between the two. Later in the game, Haliburton and Lillard faced off following Antetokounmpo's block on Haliburton's layup attempt, and more technicals were issued as Siakam and Bobby Portis joined in with trash talk. The drama escalated in Game 4 when Damian Lillard suffered a devastating Achilles tear, rendering him unable to play for the rest of the postseason. This injury occurred during a 129-103 blowout loss for the Bucks, who fell into a 3-1 hole, worsening their morale. With this backdrop, the charged energy leading to Game 5 became clear. The Bucks suffered an emotional exit in overtime as their blown lead spelled elimination. Adding to the tension of the evening, Antetokounmpo and Pacers guard Benedict Mathurin got into a heated exchange at center court, which escalated to the point that others had to intervene and break it up. This set the stage for a more pivotal clash involving John Haliburton. Building on a backdrop of fierce competition from earlier encounters, the quick resolution of the Haliburton incident, marked by his public apology, Tyrese's measured reaction, and Antetokounmpo's reassurance that matters have been settled amicably, signaled a constructive outcome to what might have otherwise developed into a more drawn-out controversy. The NBA appeared to sidestep imposing fines or further penalties, likely influenced by Antetokounmpo's discretion in withholding full details of Haliburton's remarks and the subsequent apologies. This allowed both teams and their associated families to focus ahead. The Pacers gearing up for their second-round face-off against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Bucks beginning to confront questions about their trajectory after another underwhelming playoff effort. Understanding the bigger picture, to fully grasp the weight of the altercation between Giannis Antetokounmpo and John Haliburton, it's essential to consider the larger context surrounding the Bucks-Pacers rivalry and how this incident highlights the emotional intensity often present in professional sports, especially during the high-pressure atmosphere of the NBA playoffs. The tension between Antetokounmpo and the Haliburton family, both Tyrese and his father, is not an isolated event, but rather the newest chapter in what has grown into one of the league's fiercest interdivisional rivalries over the past 2 seasons. By the time the playoffs rolled around in 2025, these two teams had faced each other an incredible 19 times over just 18 months, factoring in regular season clashes, the 2023 NBA Cup semifinals, and consecutive playoff series in 2024 and 2025. This frequent and meaningful competition inevitably fostered not only familiarity, but also animosity, with certain moments elevating the tension. The rivalry's first major turning point came during the 2023 NBA Cup semifinals, when Haliburton's exaggerated Dame Time celebration, a nod to Damian Lillard's famous gesture after making a clutch shot in a Pacers victory, set a provocative tone. This was followed by the notorious game ball incident in December 2023, further fueling the animus between the teams. Following Antetokounmpo's career-best 64-point game, a controversy broke out over who should keep the game ball. The Pacers argued it should go to their rookie, Oscar Sabiu, who had just notched his first NBA point during the match. This disagreement prompted Antetokounmpo to make a beeline for the Pacers' locker room, where he confronted team staff and exchanged heated words with Haliburton. Tensions boiled over, reportedly leading to Indiana's general manager being elbowed in the ribs amid the commotion. The rivalry between the two teams reached new heights during the 2024 playoffs, where the Pacers, seeded 6th, pulled off a stunning upset by defeating the 3rd-seeded Bucks in 6 games. This series was marred by drama, including Antetokounmpo missing games due to a calf injury and confrontations like the altercation involving Bobby Portis and Andrew Nembhard. The Pacers' triumph boosted their confidence and solidified their position as a persistent headache for Milwaukee. During the 2024-25 season, although the Bucks won 3 of their 4 matchups, one clash stood out. On March 11, 2025, with the Pacers trailing by 3 points in the dying seconds, Haliburton drained a difficult 3-pointer over Antetokounmpo, drew a foul, and converted it into a 4-point play that clinched a 115-114 victory for Indiana. The dramatic finish left the Bucks reeling and reinforced Haliburton's reputation as a clutch player when facing Milwaukee. By the time the 2025 playoffs rolled around, there was no disguising the true nature of this showdown. As Haliburton openly remarked, "We don't like them, and they don't like us. That's just the way it is." His forthright statement captured the genuine hostility that had grown between these Central Division foes. Adding to the intrigue of this rivalry was the stark difference between the teams and their star players. Antetokounmpo, a 2-time MVP and champion from 2021, epitomized physical power and fierce determination. At 30 years old during the 2025 postseason, he stood as the seasoned face of championship success. Meanwhile, Haliburton, a 25-year-old 2-time All-Star, brought an exciting mix of swagger, creativity, and clutch performances to his up-and-coming Pacers squad. Their teams mirrored these contrasts as well. While the Bucks dealt with an aging lineup and were further hampered by Lillard suffering a season-ending Achilles injury in Game 4, the Pacers, energized by Haliburton's leadership, were on the rise as one of the most dynamic young squads in the Eastern Conference. This disparity in each team's trajectory heightened the intensity of their meetings, with the question of Antetokounmpo's future in Milwaukee perhaps hinging on their ability to stave off threats like the ascendant Pacers. The 2025 playoff series served as a prime example of the fierce intensity that defined this rivalry. The matchups were marked by aggressive gameplay, technical fouls, and deep-seated personal tensions. Both teams openly recognized the singular nature of this competition. Bucks coach Doc Rivers pointed out that the rivalry had developed naturally through the drama of both the regular season and the playoffs, while Haliburton pushed back against the idea that NBA rivalries were disappearing by saying, "People claim league rivalries are gone. Well, this one is alive and well." When viewed through this perspective, the clash between Giannis Antetokounmpo and John Haliburton seems less like an isolated altercation and more like a culmination of 2 years of brewing conflict. The emotional stakes for both teams had reached a tipping point, boiling over after a devastating elimination, with the Bucks surrendering a 7-point lead in the final 40 seconds of overtime, only for Haliburton to blow past Antetokounmpo to secure the game-winning play. The raw emotions that followed extended beyond just the players themselves. This confrontation can be dissected using multiple analytical approaches, the first of which is its emotional context. The intense stakes of a playoff elimination matchup, coupled with the Bucks' late-game collapse, created a charged atmosphere. John Haliburton's behavior, though improper, was rooted in the pride of a parent witnessing a pivotal moment for his child, Tyrese securing victory by eliminating a former MVP with a decisive drive. Additionally, there's the cultural aspect that Antetokounmpo himself highlighted in his response. His focus on humility mirrors his personal principles, shaped by his family's immigrant journey and the values imparted by his late father. This approach contrasts sharply with the more expressive American sports culture, where trash talk and celebrations are often seen as integral to competition. Furthermore, the situation spotlights the role of parents in the realm of professional sports. It raises pressing questions about the limits of parental involvement. John Haliburton's actions while sitting courtside blurred the distinction between being a supportive family member and an overstepping spectator, prompting scrutiny of such conduct. At what point does enthusiastic backing become excessive interference? The swift, widespread criticism of his behavior, including from his own son, makes it clear that a boundary was crossed, no matter the emotional context. The confrontation highlights the intricate dynamics of modern sports rivalries. In the current NBA landscape, where players often maintain close personal relationships off the court and regularly switch teams via trades or free agency, the traditional rivalries rooted in team allegiance have sometimes shifted toward more personality-driven tensions. The discord involving Antetokounmpo and the Haliburton family underscores how personal relationships can shape and intensify broader team rivalries. Yet, amidst all this context, what stands out most prominently is the mature manner in which the situation was handled. All three central figures, Antetokounmpo, Tyrese Haliburton, and John Haliburton, took deliberate measures to defuse the conflict rather than escalate it. Despite his evident irritation, Antetokounmpo chose not to reveal exactly what was said by John Haliburton, stressing instead that they had resolved the matter amicably. Tyrese Haliburton openly admitted his father's misstep and committed to addressing the issue directly and constructively. Meanwhile, John Haliburton offered a swift and direct apology without attempting to justify his actions. Moving forward, this event is likely to stand out as a defining moment in the evolving Bucks-Pacers rivalry. The Pacers' back-to-back playoff wins against the Bucks have already set the stage for future encounters between these teams, which will undoubtedly draw on and amplify this history. The altercation involving John Haliburton infused the story with a more personal layer, creating a narrative that fans and media are likely to revisit whenever these two teams clash in important matchups. For Antetokounmpo, the elimination and the subsequent incident were yet another chapter in what has been a challenging phase of his career. Since claiming the championship in 2021, the Bucks have suffered 3 consecutive playoff letdowns, failing to progress past the second round despite Antetokounmpo's ongoing excellence on the court. With increasing speculation surrounding his future in Milwaukee, moments like this naturally contribute to larger discussions about his career path and overall legacy. On the other hand, Tyrese Haliburton faced the situation with composure beyond his years, using it as an opportunity to demonstrate both leadership and maturity. By firmly condemning his father's behavior while still showing respect toward both his parent and Antetokounmpo, he managed a potentially volatile moment with notable grace. As the emerging face of a rising Pacers team that earned a spot against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round, his adept handling of the controversy solidified his readiness to tackle the responsibilities that come with a growing spotlight. As for John Haliburton, though the incident was undeniably awkward, his prompt apology and apparent clearing of the air with Antetokounmpo brought the matter to a relatively swift close. The experience serves as a reminder of the importance of setting appropriate boundaries as a parent of a professional athlete, particularly amid the high emotions of the playoffs. Given the history between these franchises, it's clear that this rivalry is far from finished. Future clashes between Antetokounmpo and Tyrese Haliburton are bound to bring up this event, further enriching the narrative of their rivalry. However, the composed approach taken by everyone involved suggests that any tension can be effectively directed into intense on-court battles rather than unnecessary off-court disputes. Thank you for tuning into this video. If you're interested in more intriguing content like this, go ahead and select one of the options displayed on your screen.